Welcome, all of you. Today we will be having a lecture on the Limitation Act. So, we have studied the principle. Ibi jus, ubi remedy. Wherever there is a right, there should be a remedy also. A right without remedy will be of no use for us. And so itself, the law ensures that when a right is provided, it will be provided along with that a mechanism to enforce such right once the right is violated. So, coming to the aspect of Limitation Act, we can classify rights into two. One is the perfect right and other is imperfect rights. So even though the rights of a person, even though if it would exist even after his death, and it may be enforced by their legal representatives, the law itself provides with certain limitations upon that, upon the enforcement of the rights. So itself, even though there is a right, it may not be possible for a person to enforce that right at any time. The right will have to be enforced, or the remedy will have to be sought by the person within a reasonable time. And such rights which could not be enforced, that can be classified as imperfect rights. So if a right remains unexercised for a long period, that will take away the right of the person to get the right enforced. And this is because of a policy that the right shall not remain in existence in a state of constant doubt. For example, if I am having a right against one of you, and if I am having a feeling that it could be enforced at any time, that will always act upon as a threat upon you. And that will threat will continue up to your life, again after your lifetime upon your legal representatives. Like that, there will be no end. So there should be an end to the right. And the Limitation Act, coming to the Limitation Act puts up a limitation upon the exercise of the right. Though you are having a right, Limitation Act provides that such rights should be exercised within a reasonable time. And the Act also say that the period of limitation that shall not be too short or too long. So a reasonable period, the Limitation Act will provide you with a reasonable time to exercise your right or to enforce your right. And the laws of limitation, that is mainly based upon two principles or two legal maxims. One is interest republicae et sit finis litem. Interest republicae et sit finis litem. And that means that the interest of the state, that is, it's a public interest. The interest of the state requires that there should be an end to a litigation. And second is vigilantibus non dormantibus jura subventient. That is, law assists the vigilant persons and not one who sleeps over his right. So whenever there is a right, a person is not allowed to sleep upon his right for a long time, and when he wakes up, he can exercise his right. It should be exercised within a reasonable time. Allowing a long time or a long time for the enforcement of a claim of a person, that would be, or that would amount to a cruelty to the other side. Secondly, by lapse of time, the defendant might have lost the evidence in the case. അപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ എന്തെങ്കിലും ഒരു തർക്കം ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ ആ കാര്യത്തിൽ, തർക്കത്തിൻ്റെ കാര്യത്തിൽ അതിൻ്റെ തെളിവുകൾ നമ്മൾ എല്ലാ കാലവും സൂക്ഷിച്ചു വെച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കണമെന്നില്ല. So there is a chance that the evidence on the part of the defendant may be lost at any time, and or it may not be preserved for a long time. And thirdly, if a person is having a good cause of action, certainly he would enforce it at the earliest within a reasonable time with reasonable diligence. So if a person is not exercising his right within a reasonable time, it would lead to a presumption that he may not be having a good cause of action, or he may be playing for the time, and it will act upon as a threat upon the defendant. So as we have seen, the law of limitation that is mainly based upon a public policy that there should be an end to a litigation, and the Limitation Act does not intend to destroy the rights of a person. What it does is only to put certain limitations upon the exercise of the right. And so itself, even though the right to exercise or enforce his right is lost, the right will remain there, and it would be used as a defense in a suit or in a proceeding against the person. That is, if that person who is having a right against another person, he cannot use it as a means of attack, but he can use it as a means of defense. He could not attack the other person based upon his right, but he could defend a claim which is made against him based upon the right which he is having. And coming to the Limitation Act. The Limitation Act is enacted with a view to implement the recommendations of the report of the Law Commission, the third report of the Law Commission. And the main recommendations which were made by the Law Commission were that the Articles of Limitation Act, that shall not be that should be based upon a classification as to the subject matter. That is, with regard to separate subject matters, the period of limitation may vary. For example, with regard to a money suit, the period of limitation is 3 years, but with regard to a suit for possession of an immovable property, the period of limitation will be 12 years. So there should be a reasonable classification with regard to the subject matter while fixing the period of limitation. Another recommendation which has been made by the Third Law Commission is that a fixed period of limitation should be provided as far as possible. So the period of limitation that should be fixed. And another recommendation made by the Third Law Commission was that the starting point of the limitation should be the date on which the cause of action has occurred. So because without a cause of action, no person will be able to move before the court. So the period of limitation should commence on the date on which the cause of action has arose. So the Limitation Act, it will consolidate, it's intended to consolidate and amend the law regarding limitation in India. The object of the Limitation Act is to prescribe a period of limitation which provides or which would act as a bar for a legal action. And the period of limitation means that period of limitation which is prescribed for filing of a suit, appeal or an application as provided in the schedule to the Limitation Act. So as I have told you, the Limitation Act bars only the remedy and not the right. The intention of the Limitation Act is not to take away your right. So I have told you that right will remain there as an imperfect right. What it bars is only the remedy for you to approach the court for enforcing your right. So once the period of limitation has expired, the person will be barred from initiating a proceeding for enforcement of his right before a court of law. So, in a sense, we can say that the Limitation Act aims at enforcing or aims at providing justice to all persons. Justice to the person who is having a right, who is having a claim, and also justice to a person against whom a right can be claimed. Now coming to the scheme of the Act. Coming to the scheme of the Act. As we have seen, the principal concern of the Limitation Act is to see that the period of limitation is not too long or too short. And the Limitation Act, that is divided into three. First division, second division, and third division. The scheme of the Limitation Act classifies the period of limitation into three divisions. And the first division provides with the period of limitation for filing suits of various types. And the schedule to the Limitation Act under Articles 1 to 113. The schedule of the Limitation Act provides with articles. Articles 1 to 113 provides with the first division cases. They are with regard to the institution of suits. With regard to various types of suits. What is the period of limitation with regard to various types of suits? And second division, that relates to appeals. Second division of the Limitation Act provides with regard to the period of limitation in filing appeals. And it consists of articles 114 to 117. 114 to 117 with regard to the appeals, the period of limitation for filing appeals. The third division that provides with regard to the applications of various types as contemplated under Articles 118 to Articles 151, 118 to 151. Generally, we can say that the Limitation Act that is not applicable to criminal proceedings, except the provisions contained under Articles 114 and 115 with regard to the appeals in criminal matters. Except with regard to the appeals in criminal matters, the Limitation Act is not applicable with regard to criminal cases. So there is the Limitation Act does not provide with regard to period of limitation for filing a complaint before the magistrate, etc. But coming to the provisions of Code of Criminal Procedure, as you would have studied, Section 468, 2 of the Code of Criminal Procedure provides with certain periods of limitation with regard to certain offences. Accordingly, a period of 6 months limitation is provided under Section 468 of the Code of Criminal Procedure if the offence is punishable only with fine. Secondly, if the offence is punishable with imprisonment for a term not exceeding 1 year, the period of limitation will be 1 year. And thirdly, with regard to the offences punishable with imprisonment for a term exceeding 1 year but not exceeding 3 years, the period of limitation provided is 3 years. And the Limitation Act is applicable only with regard to the cases of which the Limitation Act specifically provides for it. It will not be applicable for cases which are outside the Limitation Act. For example, a proceeding under the Industrial Disputes Act. In Town Municipal Council versus Presiding Officer Labour Court, year 1969, Supreme Court 1335. In this case, it was held that the Limitation Act is not applicable to a proceeding under the Industrial Disputes Act. And It is also not applicable with regard to writ proceedings, writ proceedings also. Depending upon the particular nature, the court will decide whether the proceedings has been initiated within a reasonable time or not. And if it is not within a reasonable time, we see that usually the courts would dismiss the writ petitions. But with regard to fundamental rights, it could be the courts do not interfere in the manner as in the case of other cases. And coming to the scheme of the Limitation Act, we will see that the articles of the Limitation Act, that is divided into three. The first column dealing with the description of the suit. So there it will be described what are they, what types of suit or what type of appeal, etc. The second column provides with regard to the period of limitation. What is the period of limitation? Suit for money, 3 years. And then the time from which, the third column will provide you with the time from which the period of limitation will begin to run. So from what time the period of limitation will begin to run. And then there may arise a question as regard to whether the court is having the power to extend the period of limitation, and whether what will be the impact of a bar of limitation. Whether a suit which has been barred by way of limitation can be entertained by a court, and what would be the result if the court mistakenly entertains a suit which has been barred by limitation. Generally, when if a suit has been filed beyond the period of limitation, the suit will be liable to be dismissed. Period of limitation കഴിഞ്ഞൊരു സൂട്ട് ഫയൽ ചെയ്താൽ ആ സൂട്ട് ഡിസ്മിസ് ചെയ്യുക എന്നുള്ളത് മാത്രമാണ് കോടതിക്ക് മുൻപിലുള്ള ഏക ഓപ്ഷൻ. And even if the other side has not at the first instance taken the plea of limitation, it would not affect the position. In Banarsi Das versus Kanshiram, the Supreme Court has held that citation is AR 1963 Supreme Court 1165. AR 1963 Supreme Court 1165. In this case, the Supreme Court has observed that a new plea of limitation can be taken at any stage of the proceedings. Even if at the time of filing of the written statement, if the defendant has omitted to take the plea of limitation, the court has held that it can be taken at any stage of the proceeding, provided it is based upon an admitted and undisputed or proved facts. That plea of limitation, that should be based upon an admitted fact. If the plea of limitation which has been taken up at a later stage, if it is based upon an admission which has been made by the other side, or if it is based upon certain proved facts, or if it is based upon certain undisputed facts, then certainly the court has held that it can be raised at any stage of the proceeding. And then a question may arise as to whether a consent given by the defendant would take away the application of the Limitation Act. A consent or an agreement which has been made between the parties to the suit, that could not extend or alter the period of limitation. So by way of an agreement or by way of a consent given or which has been entered into between the parties, it is not possible to extend the period of limitation, or it is not possible to shorten the period of limitation also. It will remain as such, provided under the articles of the Limitation Act. If there is a stipulation in a contract which would curtail the period of limitation, that would be inoperative. And if a legal proceeding has been initiated by the other side in spite of such agreement, still the suit will be good and it will not be barred in any way. That was held by the Supreme Court in Harzat Cooperative Marketing Society versus United India Fire and General Insurance Company. That has been held by the High Court of Bombay in AIR 1992, Bombay 341. However, as I have told you that generally the plea of limitation will have to be raised by the defendant at the first instance. And even if the plea has not been raised by the defendant, still the suit is liable to be dismissed. But in Food Corporation of India versus Messrs. Babulal Agarwal, Food Corporation of India versus Messrs. Babulal Agarwal, 2004, Volume 2 SEC 712. In this case, the Supreme Court observed that it is always desirable. It's always desirable. The term used is it's always desirable that if the defendant would like to raise the issue of limitation, the same may be raised in the pleadings so that the other party will also be having a notice of the same. So even though it is the suit will be liable to be dismissed on the ground of a limitation, the court has observed that it would be desirable to raise the plea of limitation at an earliest available opportunity. Then an issue may arise as to what would happen if the court remains closed on the day of a limitation. So according to the Limitation Act, if the last day for filing a suit is a Sunday or a public holiday, or for some other reason a day on which the court remains closed, whether it would bar the person from filing the suit on the very next day. In such cases, the suit or appeal that can be filed on the reopening date as provided under Section 4 of the Limitation Act. Section 4 of the Limitation Act provides that if on the date of limitation, on the last date of limitation, if the court remains closed, it can be filed on the reopening day. Now coming to Section 5. Section 5 of the Act provides with the provisions regarding the extension of period of limitation or condonation of delay. Condonation of delay. So if we could not file an appeal or an application with regard to a particular case, Section 5 provides that it can be filed along with an application to condone the delay by stating a sufficient reasonable cause for not filing such appeal or application within the period of limitation. And a particular aspect of Section 5 is that Section 5 is not applicable with regard to the institution of a fresh suit and also with regard to the proceedings under Order 21, that is execution proceedings. So Section 5 of the Act regarding condonation of delay is applicable only with regard to appeals and other applications. It is not applicable with regard to institution of a fresh suit or with regard to the proceedings under Order 21, that is execution proceedings. So the provisions with regard to applications under the provisions of Order 21 is expressly excluded from the scope of the purview of Section 5. The suits are excluded. Proceedings under Order 21, that is also excluded from the purview of Section 5 of the Limitation Act, which provides for condonation of delay. So if the suit has not been filed within the period of limitation, the party will not be having an option to file it after the period of limitation by invoking the provisions of Section 5 of the Limitation Act. Similarly, the party also will not be having a right to get the delay condoned in case of a proceedings under Order 21, that is execution proceedings. And while condoning the delay with regard to an appeal, for example, with regard to an appeal against a decree, or with regard to filing of an application to set aside the ex parte order in the trial stage. When an application under Section 5 for condonation of the delay is filed by a party, the court will have to consider certain aspects. Firstly, the court will have to consider with regard to, or the court must keep in its mind that the right accrued to the respondent in the application for extension of time under Section 5, that shall not be disturbed ordinarily. And then the court will have to examine whether there is a sufficient cause, or whether the applicant, the petitioner, a person who has filed the application under Section 5 of the Limitation Act, whether he is having a good and sufficient cause for not filing the application within the prescribed time. If sufficient cause is proved by the petitioner, the delay may be condoned by the court. And if it could not be proved by the petitioner, it shall not be condoned. And with regard to considering the crucial date, what is the crucial date or the sufficiency of cause for not filing the case, it should have reference to the day of limitation. For example, an ex parte decree has been passed. Limitation Act provides that a petition to set aside the ex parte order, that is to be filed within a period of 30 days from the date of the ex parte order or ex parte decree. And the person against whom the ex parte decree has been passed, he was in a position to file the petition to set aside the ex parte decree within the period of 30 days. But after the expiry of that 30 days, on the 40th day of passing of the ex parte decree, the person suffered from certain injuries, say by virtue of a road accident or anything. Then that would not be a sufficient ground, because upon the date on which the limitation has expired, he did not have that cause. That cause has arose only after the period of expiration of the limitation. So that cannot be considered to be a sufficient ground. അപ്പോൾ എന്നാണോ ലിമിറ്റേഷൻ തീരുന്നത് ആ ദിവസത്തിനകം ഇദ്ദേഹത്തിന് കോടതിയിലേക്ക് കൃത്യമായ സമയത്ത് അപ്പീലോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഈ പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ ഒരു എക്സ് പാർട്ടി ഡിഗ്രി സെറ്റ് അസൈഡ് ചെയ്യുന്നതിനുള്ള ആപ്ലിക്കേഷനോ ഫയൽ ചെയ്യാനുള്ള സാഹചര്യം ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നില്ല എന്ന് കാണിക്കേണ്ടിയിരിക്കും. ആ ലിമിറ്റേഷൻ പീരീഡിന് ശേഷമുണ്ടായ സംഭവങ്ങളെ കോടതി ഈ സെക്ഷൻ 5 അനുസരിച്ചിട്ടുള്ള പെറ്റീഷൻ പരിഗണിക്കുമ്പോൾ കോടതി അത് കണക്കാക്കേണ്ട ആവശ്യമില്ല. ആൻഡ് generally, the expression sufficient cause, that will be given a liberal interpretation so as to ensure that the right of a party is not disturbed. In the Supreme Court in Sandhya Rani versus Sudha Rani versus Sudha Rani, reported in year 1978, Supreme Court 537. The Supreme Court has held that a liberal view will have to be adopted with regard while considering an application under Section 5 of the Act. And while considering each case will have to be considered as a separate case, and due regard will have to be given by the court also in considering an application under Section 5, having regard to the facts and circumstances of the particular case, as observed by the Supreme Court in Ramagowda versus Land Acquisition Officer. Ramagowda versus Land Acquisition Officer, reported in year 1988, Supreme Court 897. And it is a whether to condone the delay or not. That is exactly the discretion of the court. It's a discretion of the court whether to condone the delay or not. In Balbir Singh versus Bhog Singh, it was held that an appellant, if he had preferred an appeal before a wrong court, കോടതി മാറിപ്പോയി appeal file ചെയ്തു. Then, if that filing before a wrong court, if it was a bona fide, if it was out of a bona fide belief that that is the right court, if his belief was that the appeal would lie before that court where he had moved the application, even though the belief was wrong, the court should take a lenient view, and the time during which the appeal was pending before that wrong court will have to be considered while calculating the period of limitation. ഇപ്പോൾ തെറ്റായ ഒരു കോടതിയിലാണ് അപ്പീൽ ഫയൽ ചെയ്തത്. കോടതിയിൽ ശ്രദ്ധയിൽപ്പെടാതെ ആ അപ്പീൽ കുറച്ചു കാലം പ്രോസിക്യൂട്ട് ചെയ്ത് പോയിട്ടുണ്ട്. പിന്നീടാണ് കോടതി മാറിപ്പോയി എന്നറിയുന്നതെങ്കിൽ പുതിയ കോടതിയിൽ ആ അപ്പീൽ ഫയൽ ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ തെറ്റായ കോടതിയിൽ എത്ര കാലം ഈ കേസ് പ്രോസിക്യൂട്ട് ചെയ്യപ്പെട്ടിട്ടുണ്ടോ, എത്ര കാലം ആ കേസ് നടന്നിട്ടുണ്ടോ, that period will have to be considered, or that period will have to be set aside while calculating the period of limitation. Next, we will have to move on to the aspect of the rules of exclusions provided under sections 6 to 11. That we will consider in the next slide. Thank you.